stopping by to share the assignment for today. So I am excited to just jump right into it and to start working on FRQs. So I noticed that some of our students have already submitted the assignment, other students have not submitted the assignment. So I did take the time to submit an exemplar response so that way you guys can have something to base off your answers, so that way you can replicate that style of writing, because that's what you need to be doing for the FRQ section when the AP test comes around. So now we're going to jump right into it. This was a question that we were supposed to work on, and it was all in regards to the schools of psychology, so chapter 1. And so it says, Stella has been under much stress lately because her 7-year marriage seems to be falling apart and she has a young daughter to look after. Stella's own parents split when she was young, and while she wanted to live with her father after the divorce, the courts awarded custody to her mother. Stella designs child safety seats and spends much time listening to user feedback. She always believed that her peers saw her differently because of her family situation, and as a result, she became more introverted. Stella attended a religious school that emphasized the importance of family staying together, and she believed that her own family was not living up to these ideals. Despite these setbacks, Stella is trying to save her marriage and is seeking help from a psychologist. She is optimistic that she is and her husband can remedy their differences. So it says, Part A, identify how the following approaches to psychology might explain the origins or potentially recovery of Stella's problems. So they want us to use behavioral school of psychology, they want us to use psychoanalytic school of psychology, cognitive, humanistic, and sociocultural. So you can find all this information in chapter 1. This is the foundational information for psychology that you need to master, so that way you can go on and venture higher level courses. So now, when we talk about the sections that we need to work on, remember, part A comes first, then part B. So whenever you decide on working on what question on the AP test, please work on part A first and then part B, so on and so forth. But you have the luxury of choosing either the first question to work on or the second question to work on. So for those of us that are having trouble or like thinking like, hey, how am I supposed to do this? We did have a meeting yesterday. We did have a great PowerPoint that we reviewed in reference to like how to create an FRQ in psychology. But today we're going to just jump right into it, and I'm going to like help you out in discovering how to do this. So Part A wants us to identify the following approaches. I read them. So they want us to identify and then explain the origins. So pretty much we need to define, right, what it is, and then we need to relate it to the scenario. So for part A, the best way to do this would be to just dive right into it, to explain what it is. So a behavioral psychologist believes that we learn through rewards and punishment and direct observation. If Stella observed her own parents' interactions with one another as combative and tense, she might have learned that this is how to interact with one's spouse, causing her to behave similarly in her own marriage. So you see here, we actually defined what a behavioral psychologist is, and then we explain how it relates to what Stella is going through, or how a behavioral psychologist would explain her situation. So now we have another example here. A psychoanalytic psychologist would likely trace Stella's problems to her childhood and specifically to the phallic stage of psychosexual development proposed by Freud. So here we have our definition within that sentence. We also give more details by stating where it comes from and what stage of psychosexual development she might be in. So this goes to show that the writer knows about what entails psychoanalytic psychology, or how a psychoanalyst would think about what Stella is going through. So during this stage, children prefer the opposite sex parent, which may explain why Stella chose to live with her father when she was young. So here we have the explanation and how it relates to what she's going through and like what she did, right? And how it affected her. So now we have the cognitive psychologist approach. So a cognitive psychologist would focus on Stella's perceptions and thoughts because she perceived herself to be different than those in her religious school. Stella became more introverted and thought that she would not be accepted by her peers. This may have led her to poor self-esteem and a lack of self-confidence. So you notice, Cognitive psychologists focus on perceptions and thoughts. So that's our definition right there. And then we just jump right into like explaining how it relates to what Stella is going through and how a cognitive psychologist would explain what she's going through. Now, a humanistic psychologist, here we have a humanistic psychologist would believe that in Stella's ability to overcome, her challenging childhood and the current troubles in her marriage. Stella is seeking outside help to keep her marriage intact, which demonstrates her potential for growth and overcoming obstacles in her life. So remember, humanistic psychologists believe that people can overcome and challenge their childhood or challenge their development or challenge what they went through and become a better version of themselves. So here, a humanistic psychologist would believe in Stella's ability to overcome her challenging childhood and current troubles in her marriage is the definition. Right after, we have the explanation. How would the humanist psychologist explain what Stella is going through? So Stella is seeking outside help to keep her marriage intact, which demonstrates her potential for growth and overcoming obstacles in her life. So we just basically relate what she's going through in a perception based on humanistic psychology. So then we have the last little part here. A sociocultural psychologist would focus on society and culture. That's what it is. That's what they focus on. That's the definition. If Stella comes from a religious background, her immediate environment in her religious school may have led her to believe that divorce is unacceptable. Because Stella is now facing the decline of her own marriage, she may feel like she is getting others around her down, specifically her daughter. So this just goes right into the definition, what it is, and then it explains how it relates. Remember, you're explaining based off of that perspective. So when explaining, you need to use that perspective to explain. You need to use the behavioral psychologist perspective, analytic, cognitive, humanistic, and sociocultural. And then once you're explaining, try to explain how that kind of psychologist would explain the situation. Now for part B. Part B here we have, let's go back to the question. So identify how the following careers in psychology may be related to the situation above. Identify the type of psychology that best describes Stella's career and provide evidence from the situation. What type of psychologist might be able to assist Stella in working through her current marital problems and why? So in a nutshell, right, it's a very, very brief question. So it calls for a brief response. Stella designs products and she wants to be functional and I'm so sorry, let me just reread that. So Stella designs products that she wants to be functional and easy to use. She is likely a human factor psychologist. Human factor psychologists focus on how technology can be bettered and how the user experience can be bettered so that way it becomes easier to use that product. So here, based off of the scenario that was given to us, right, Stella designs child safety seats and spends much time listening to user feedback. That gives that definition right away. So if you knew what a factor psychologist was, you would be able to explain what kind of psychologist she was. And now Stella would be likely to seek treatment from a counseling psychologist because she is not clearly suffering from diagnosed illness, so she doesn't need a psychiatrist or anything like that. This would fall under the domain of clinical psychology, and there is no identification that she has been prescribed medication, which would be more likely fall under the domain of psychiatry. So basically, you just want to explain exactly what they're asking you. Here, they want you to identify what kind of career she might partake in, and then what type of psychologist would she benefit from because of what she's going through in her marriage. So very straightforward. Do not overthink it, guys. Remember, this was an example. So this was yesterday's question. If you were having problems with yesterday's question, this is a great time to use this video and to use this information to produce your own answer. Now, as a result, I have posted a second question. This second question has been posted on Albert.io, and you need to complete it by Friday. This question relates to the second part of chapter 1. So it'll talk more about the research methods. So you'll practice more about research method with language regarding like experiments, testing, observations, things of that nature. So it won't be different from this. You just simply need to define and you need to relate, explain, right? So define what it is. What is that word relating to that they're asking you about? And then just simply explain how it relates to the scenario, just like we did on this one. It's not going to change. It's going to be the same style of question. The only thing that changes is the question itself and the words that you need to use. So thank you very much for stopping. Another thing that I just remembered, whenever you're finishing your FRQs, guys, I do want you to go on to Albert.io and then submit, right? So you can submit. You won't have anything to submit. Just click on submit the FRQ once you have finished and sent me a picture. So that way I have a way to track down all my students that have finished and those that have not done the work. So thank you very much for stopping by. If you have any questions, any concerns, any ideas, just please let me know. Remember, today we do not go live, so I will be behind my computer screen. I can reply to any question that you may have. And also keep in mind that I'm just a message away or a call away if you need any assistance with this assignment. So remember, the second FRQ question will be posted on Albert.io. It's already there. You can access it, do the same thing, work on it, use this video to kind of reflect on how you answered last time and try to better your response this time. So I'll let you go with this, guys. Thank you very much for stopping and have a great day.